What's up, guys? Welcome back. So if you haven't noticed, November is just a couple days away, and you know what that means. It means wintertime is coming. If you're anything like me, you kind of drag your feet on getting ready for the wintertime, but let's go ahead and get started doing that now if you haven't already done it. And let's go over just a few things that'll keep your butt out of trouble whenever things don't work right this winter. Because let's be honest, things are just a little bit more stupid every single day. So without further ado, let's get going. So thank you guys for watching. This video is sponsored by absolutely freaking no one, dude. But it could have been, so hit me up. But in all reality, I do have some Amazon affiliate links in the description and comments section below. You can help us out even if you buy something that's not listed in the link. And it really does the equivalent of buying me a cup of coffee once a week or so. So anyway, you guys pause for capitalism, hit the thumbs up button, and let's ride. So things just don't work as well in the wintertime as they normally do. That could be heaters, electrical stuff. It's the time for snow and ice and busted pipes and just broken stuff. If you're anything like me, we have power go out a couple times every year. It's not that big a deal. We prepared for it, so it's not that big a deal. But we need to look at some things like, how are we going to keep warm? If something does happen, how are we going to fix it? Do we have control over water that has gone rogue, like busted pipes and things like that? And just, let's be honest, in the wintertime, there's a lot of draw on the power grid and things just fail, right? They just fail. It just happens. So how can we do to mitigate our risks from that? Let's start off with the keeping warm. Okay, so obviously, we all know the big prepper thing to do is, plug in your central heat and air unit and bust out the firewood and get the fireplace going and all of that. And hey, I'm with you. I do all that stuff too. But for emergency heat, we need to look into a few more options. For example, my fireplace, I have a good fireplace in my house, but it heats the front of the house wonderfully. The back of my house, not so much. So what my solution is these little buddy style propane heaters. I've got the small one and the large one, and these are great options. Both of them are. They're easy to use. They're lightweight. They don't weigh nothing. They actually put out a good amount of heat, and I'll have some links to these. They'll run off of the small green, camp style bottles, or you can buy the hose as long as you run the filter to run them off your barbecue tank style or bigger for that matter. And they do a wonderful job of not only emergency heat, but they also just having that little spot area that you're working in. And this guy right here, I spend a lot of time in the wintertime in the garage. It's all I use for heat, and it does just fine. Down to about 10 degrees, it was pretty comfortable. So, it's hard to beat that. So your other options are pretty varied. We used to run primarily kerosene heaters, and I loved them. They were great. The fuel was inexpensive. They put out a lot of heat. They didn't dry everything out, and they're still a good option. The only reason we don't run those anymore is just I had to make a choice. Am I going to store a bunch of propane heaters, or am I going to store a bunch of kerosene stuff? And the thing about the propane is, once you get into that ecosystem, it opens up camp stoves and camp lights and all of that. I get to use the same propane for my grill, and it's just more versatile to me. But the 20,000 BTU kerosene heaters, as well as the 10,000 BTU radiant heaters, are excellent choices as well, especially if kerosene is more common of a fuel in your area than mine. It's a little hard to find the inexpensive kerosene. So if I were to go and buy, 150 gallons. It's hard in my area to find that. So that's the reason why we switched to these propane guys rather than just the kerosene. Obviously, we've already kind of brushed on it, but a fireplace, having some firewood available for emergencies. A lot of parts of the country, that's their primary heat. We live right now in an area that we don't have trees. Trees are an anomaly here. We don't have any. So most of the fireplaces in my area are put in as decorative fireplaces, which almost put out zero heat. So there is that option. And yes, we keep enough firewood to get us through the bad times, but it's not necessarily what we're heating our home with, although it does work just fine and it has been used for that purpose. A much better option than just a fireplace is a wood stove or a pellet stove. Yes, you do have to stockpile the pellets. A lot of them burn corn. There is some expense and a little bit less self-reliance with the pellet and corn stoves. But you know what? You can run them off of a little 1,000-watt generator. They work just fine. There's really nothing wrong with that, and a whole lot easier to store and transport the fuel for. But some type of stove will always beat any fireplace that's been put in a house over the last 20 years. So keep that in mind. So one of the biggest problems we have to solve in any kind of power outage situation, everybody's concerned about the fridge and everybody wants to, get the generator plugged in, and all of that is fair and good. But the biggest issue we actually have is freaking light. We can't see nothing. So, and there's a bunch of options with this. We've already kind of spoke about the propane heaters. Well, once you get into that ecosystem, you could run, the propane camp lights, flashlights, whatever your EDC flashlight is. But that's the obvious stuff. Headlamps. Buy like 3 of these for every person in your house. A headlamp is absolutely undeniable in its usefulness. This here is an example from Goal Zero. It's got all of the different modes and whatever, and I've had this thing for, I don't know, 10 years or so, and it's solar. So I just leave this thing in the windowsill, and I've never had it not charged whenever I need it. You can charge it, crank charge, whatever. Excellent product. As well as, magnetic work lights. This is just one from Harbor Freight. Sticks wherever I need it to. Solves a whole bunch of problems, right? It's rechargeable, USB-C. But one thing that I never realized the usefulness of until I started doing YouTube videos was all the cool little lights that is available for videos. Like this little ring light. Plugs in USB. I'll plug it in here right quick. And look. I mean, get different brightness levels. Yeah, so don't overlook these things. And they normally come with a little tripod. These are excellent work lights too. Not to mention the usefulness of being able to do a brake job or something. You'll use this thing all the time. Like 15 bucks, you can get this and the tripod. You've probably got one of the most effective just work lights that you've ever had. Digging around under the sink, fixing something like that frozen pipe that busted. So yeah, look into getting you one of the USB powered ones of these, video lights, right? They're kind of chintzy and stuff, but hey, they really do work all right. As far as backup power, as far as I'm concerned, we're mainly talking about a generator, like a gas fuel power generator. Now, what I recommend is a tri-fuel, if you can find one that covers and checks all the boxes that you have. But gas, propane, natural gas. Now, if you have to narrow it down to what you can only have one, it would be gasoline. But gasoline and propane dual fuel is always better. Propane stores indefinitely. We've already established that we've got propane around for other things. It's just, it makes it a whole lot more versatile. Natural gas backup generators like your Generacs and stuff like that are great, but just remember, if anything happens to one gas meter in your entire freaking neighborhood, they're going to come out and they're going to shut off the whole neighborhood for the safety of the public, and which they should do that. They're not wrong in doing so. But like disasters, one, house or tree or car crushes a meter, there's gas spewing out everywhere. Of course, they need to go in and cut that off for everybody's safety, right? But remember that you want to have your primary generator be powered off of fuel that is under your control and your responsibility. Now, as of right now, these are my two favorite generators. Just your little Honda inverters, and this is a Champion. I've actually had pretty good luck with this thing. This is like a 4,000 watt. That one's a 1,000 watt. However, if I were to do it again, I would get the 2,000 watt Honda. It's just a little bit more. It doesn't use hardly any more fuel. You get a better buy. So I would buy the 2,000 watt. Let's talk about these things. So with these guys here, this guy right here, this stays plugged into the refrigerator and freezer. We kind of alternate those every 4 hours or so. And this thing will burn less than a gallon of fuel in about 8 or 10 hours. And it will run that stuff just fine. The 2,000 watt would be a better option, but we run with what we got. This guy right here is what we run our living stuff, right? If we want to run some lights, we want to use the air fryer, the coffee maker, run the TV. But both of these are the inverter style generator. They're whisper quiet. And that's important because it could keep you from getting your generator freaking stolen, man. I live out in the country, so if somebody comes up to steal my stuff, it's a whole different ballgame, to say the least. But if you're in a city, that could be a real concern. But that's what these are for. Will this run the whole house? Not even close. If we have to do that, I've got a big engine-driven welder I can plug the whole house into, and that'll run the heat pump and everything else. But these right here are all we've ever really needed to get through. I've got a video on fuel storage if you're interested in that. But yeah, that's what I run. And I'm really, really happy with both of these options. Next thing, do you know how to shut off your water? Pipes breaking is a real thing. Do you know how to shut off your water? Is it shut off, at a meter outside? Is it like me? I'm on a well, so I have a water cutoff that's inside my garage that shuts off my whole house, which we've had to do before, not because of frozen pipes, but just, we won't get into that story. It was a heavy-handed adjustment of furniture. We'll leave it with that. But anyway, have a way to shut off your water so that you don't bust your pipes. Well, your pipes may bust, but whenever they do bust, it doesn't flood your house. It's crazy. I remember in 2021 with the big Texas freeze, seeing all these people freaking out because they're in like a standalone house, which they have a way to cut off their water. They're freaking out and just letting their house flood when all they had to do was go out and turn off the water. They could have stopped that problem. Now, our number one goal is to keep the pipes from freezing in the first place, which is why we started out with heaters. But insulating your pipes, wrapping them up, heat tape, there's a bunch of different options. Remember the outside hose bibs of your house, having the little covers to go over those, all things like that. Let's protect the plumbing as best we can at whatever cost that takes, because you flood your house in the winter, a whole other realm of problems has reared its ugly head. And lastly, I want to leave off with just some really, when it comes down to life or death, when this is an extreme cold situation, and it's really a life or death situation, remember, you can always retreat to your car. You get your whole family in a vehicle, as long as it's backed out away so you're not, dying of carbon monoxide. You can retreat to there. You can run your heater. You can keep your devices charged. And you can get through that. We don't want to overlook the things that are so obvious that we just didn't think about it. Another thing is retreat to a single room in your home. Now, this is a last resort thing. Yes, I know. Line those walls with blankets. If you don't have any external heat, line the walls with blankets. Set up a tent inside the room. If you don't have like a camping tent, which would work just fine, you just make you a fort out of blankets like we all did whenever we were 4 years old, right? And move all of your family, all of your pets, move everybody into that central location. And you would be surprised at just how warm that can keep everybody. Having appropriate winter clothing. I hate being cold, and I spend a lot of time out in the cold. So I've got an abundance of beanies and coveralls and bibs and jackets and gloves. I don't have that problem. But if you haven't invested in that stuff, and you don't have to buy the expensive gear, you can buy the military surplus stuff. A couple of, $30 ski gloves from Walmart or Target or whatever is sufficient, especially if you're not real hard on them. Have a couple of beanies laying around so you can stack them, right? And just remember that we don't need to overlook these overly obvious things. All right, guys, I appreciate you watching. And until next time, y'all be safe.